go down together and read verses 10 and 11. But I highly encourage you to read that entire chapter as soon as you possibly can. Read the entire chapter. And it reads in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. It starts by saying, "Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod," remember that name, the king, "behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem." Wise men from the east to Jerusalem when they heard about him being there. Verse 2. "And when they came saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star. We have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him." We have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. Write that down. Come to worship him. Verse 10. Verse 10 says, after they have said, "We've come to worship him," when they saw the star, they rejoice. To rejoice means to do something again with exceeding great joy. And our last verse. "And when they were come," watch this, "into the house." Remember, when he was born in a manger, not a mansion. He was born in a manger, and there were a lot of people around. But now when the magi, the kings, the wise men get there, they're now in the house. And the only two people that are in the house is the young child, not the newborn baby, with Mary, who's his mother. And when the magi fell down, they did what again? They worshiped him. They worshiped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they were kings. They had a lot. And frankincense, myrrh, back in that day, was just as valuable as gold. So they presented to him these gifts. They said they want to worship him, and they came to worship him. So, dear hearts, for the time that we share, help me preach this thing, all right? We're going to lift this subject. If you're ready, let's go. If you're ready, let's go. It started when she was about 2 years old. My niece, who we nicknamed Birdie, because of the way she used to form her mouth when she would say certain words, she would look just like a little birdie. And she was just about 2 years old. She was not able to say a lot of words. But Birdie, who is my first niece, Gabrielle, she had 2 words or 2 statements that she could always say. It did not matter what she was doing in her 2-year-old body. It did not matter what she was doing. Whenever she would hear someone at the door, she would run to the door, and in her limited vocabulary, David, she would oftentimes say, "My shoes, we leave now?" In other words, her shoes, she's ready to leave. It did not matter. She could be upstairs. She could be down in the basement. But when she heard that door, she would always look up, run to the door. My shoes, we leave now?" And she did that for at least a year until she could form other words. But we knew Birdie, we knew Gabrielle by the fact that she would look up, stop whatever she was doing, run to the door. It didn't matter if it was me, my mother, her mother, she would always look up, run to the door, and say, what? My choosh, my choosh. We leave now? Well, nearly 2,020 years ago, there were some wise men who were minding their business, and something happened where they too looked up, got excited, and decided it was time for them to leave. They didn't necessarily get their choose. They got some gifts because something happened in their lives that caused them to look up, stop what they were doing, and decide to leave. Now, the only account of this particular story is found here in the book of Matthew. No other of the other synoptic gospels shows or depicts this scene. Matthew is the only one who depicts this scene because of how he saw Jesus. I'll get to that in a minute. We commonly call these men, these wise men, or these kings. We commonly call them either the wise men or the magi. They were wise, distinguished foreigners. And again, we call them kings, we call them wise men, or we call them magi. The reason why we call them Marlis kings is because of Isaiah. Isaiah, in his book, Isaiah is known as a major prophet, and he was also, David, known as the eagle eye prophet. He was the eagle eye prophet because he can see things in the future with such precision and clarity. Isaiah was also the prophet in the Old Testament that spoke mostly of the virgin or Jesus's birth. So Isaiah, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 6, says it this way: and kings shall see the light and bring gold and frankincense. Kings shall see the light and bring unto this light gold and frankincense. Now, these are kings who will bring something to a king. Now, that doesn't go along with traditional thought, because generally, in order to get into the presence of a king, you had to bring a thing. But these kings says, we have no glory when we are in the face of the King of glory. So we're bringing him kings because Psalm 24 verse 7 says, not only is he the King of kings, but he's the King of glory. So what made their hearts, what made these wise men, these kings, these magi, watch this, leave what they were doing after they looked up to go see the Christ child? I wondered on the plane last night, what made them, kings, stop what they were doing and go to see the Christ child? I got three quick things. I'm gonna let you eat your leftovers from Christmas, and so I get out of here pretty quickly. The first thing that these kings did was there was a recognition of him. They recognized him. The magi, there was a recognition of the Christ child. All right. The popular what we call nativity scene, the popular nativity scene is not actually an accurate depiction of what happened, because it is more of an artistic convention than it is an actual depiction. It actually, dear heart, brings two separate scenes together in one scene. It brings the adoration of the shepherds and the adulation of the magi together in one scene. But they were actually between 2 and 3 years apart. And we know that because we mentioned the word Herod. There is an event, a tragic event called Herod's massacre of the innocent, that he instituted to kill all of the boys around the age of 2 or 3. So that's why you see that when the Magi got to Mary, she was no longer in a manger. She and only the Christ child were in the house, because years had passed since they had originally saw or experienced that star. Did you hear me? Years had passed before they had actually, from the time that they experienced the star to the fact when they got to the star. Time had moved on, but they were so desperate to get to him because there was a recognition of him. And many scholars believe, Brother David, that recognition came because these wise men who were kings, they studied. So they believed that it was based off of what they originally had read. So they had read about him, and that gave them an initial recognition of him. But in the massacre of the innocent, it's crazy how Herod wants to kill the boys who were 2 or 3 and younger. And I submit to you, if you don't hear another part of this message, maybe you would get this. Ain't it funny how someone is always trying to kill what God has called? Your destiny, trying to kill that. But that's I'll get to that another time, because I got to get this done. So first we see what? The first thing we see is there is a recognition of him. Do y'all see that? But number 2, if you read the text, not only is there a recognition of him, the second thing we also see is a reverence for him. Not just a recognition of him, but we see a reverence for him. Now, hear me closely. The recognition, we believe, came from what they read. The reverence came from what they heard. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And we know it had not been yet what they had seen, because 1 Peter 1:8 says, even though you don't see him, you love him and are filled with his glory and joy. Watch this. They are worshiping him. They are desiring to worship him, these magi, and they hadn't even seen him yet, which lets us know, everyone who's tuned in, that worship generally has very little to do with what a person has done. Worship mostly focuses on who the person is, because Jesus had not yet come on the scene to deliver, and he had not yet gone to Calvary yet. They just heard about what he's going to do. He has not done anything yet, but when he comes on the scene, he'll surely do what he's famous for. When he comes on the scene, from a kid to a king, he's going to give his birth as a gift for us as death. Did y'all get that? His death will give us life through his birth. In other words, he's going to pay a debt he did not owe to cancel a debt we could not pay. The reason why Matthew is saying this is because Matthew sees Jesus as the Son of God. So the Son of God became the Son of men, so the Son of men can become the sons of God. So first, there's a recognition of him. Secondly, there's a reverence for him. And third and finally, there's a reaction to him. There's a reaction to him. Why you say that, Bolton? Where we were last week in Numbers chapter 24, verse 17. That particular scripture historically is known as the star prophecy. Some even call it the star and scepter prophecy. Those words were spoken 1,400 years before they actually happened. 1,400 years before they actually happened. Now, history and some people believe that there were three wise men. History, some people, and many preachers have preached that there were three wise men. In fact, there's never a mention of three anything but gifts. And those were three tangible gifts. Wise men, we have it as a three because we're confusing the three gifts with the three men. But wise men, magi, never traveled in numbers of three. They always traveled in numbers of 12. So if there was a more correct depiction, it would not be three wise men bringing three gifts or one gift per person. It's more like 12 kings bringing three gifts apiece. But what we see is we forget there's three tangible gifts. There's actually four total gifts. I said that when there's a recognition of him, it mostly comes from what is read. The reverence of him comes from generally from what is heard. But the reaction to him comes from what you actually see. There's this word experience, gnosko in the Greek says, you sometimes know by what you hear, but you really believe by what you see and experience. It's actually a depiction of a mother who's a new mother for the first time. When she starts in her journey, the 9 or 10 month expansion program where she's experiencing, she starts reading about stuff and she develops an excitement. The more the expansion program increases, she goes on and she starts to hear what other people been saying about the baby. So she reads it about the baby and then she hears about the baby. But there comes a time when there's so much excitement, she wants to see the baby. And when you think about the king becoming a kid and the kid becoming a king and keeping you this year, when you think about the fact that he's kept you and your family this year, he's kept you and your family this month, he's kept you and your family this week, he's kept you and your family today, you don't just want to have a recognition of him or a reverence for him, you want to react to him. So as I close this message out, if you're ready, let's go. Like Gabrielle, get your shoes. We're ready to go and worship the King. Why? Because he's worthy to be praised. He's worthy of all glory. He's worthy of all honor. He's worthy of all praise. And you have been this year through too much not to worship him. Not only have you been through too much not to worship him, you know too much not to worship him. So that's what we come to do on this last Sunday that God has kept you, this last Sunday of 2020. You should be ready to get your shoes and leave to give him some glory. You shouldn't leave this year until you give him some glory, knowing that of all the things that have happened, he kept your family, your kids, and you didn't deserve it. But like these wise men, We don't operate off of our EQ, how we feel. We operate off of our IQ, what we know. And we know that he's been a keeper. So we say, like that song says, "Oh, come all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Come ye, oh, come ye, wherever you are. Come and behold him, born the King of angels." We don't care if he was born in Bethlehem or Birmingham. We're just glad that he was born. And he was born for you. My time is up, and I certainly appreciate yours.